Right, let's crack on then. James, over to you then. And if we could just use the chat facility to request questions going forward, that'd be really helpful. But yeah, James, go ahead.
Hi, Rob. The first obvious question, no Jason Roy. How big a decision was that, and how did you come to it?
Yeah, that was the one that we spent the most amount of time on, actually, trying to work out what we thought was the best thing to do. It was a very fiddly selection, this one, because as much for logistics, as much as anything else, we sort of, the way we went about it was that we worked out the World Cup 11 almost and the squad for that. And then we worked back from there. And that's where those decisions came to. And then on that, we thought, what was the best opening partnership for the World Cup? And we felt that in the end, it's unfortunate timing as much as anything else for Jason Roy. He's just hit a bad patch of form at the worst time. And it's not like you then had to announce the World Cup squad. The latest we could announce this was the 16th. So it wasn't like you could use Pakistan. You would be taking a gamble in Pakistan on whether or not he would find form in that time. So we just felt with the abundance of openers that we had, and actually we felt that Johnny Bairstow is one of the best opening batsmen in T20 cricket in the world, does it in the IPL, obviously, although he hasn't always done it in the IPL. He's been very good in the middle order as well. But we just felt the best combination at this time was going to be Johnny Bairstow and Jos Buttler. And then we worked back from that point.
Where does it leave Jason Roy and his white ball career? Because he's been a key part in the transformation of this white ball team, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. It just leaves him in a place where he just has to go and find form, to be honest. It's not a good time to lose form in this format. And the game's about confidence as much as anything else. If he finds that again, he too is one of the best openers around in this when he's playing well and at the top of his game. So I don't see in any stretch that this is his T20 career over. It's just a case of him finding form. And I'm sure he'll have plenty of opportunities and the abundance of T20 cricket that there is around the world to find that form again. I certainly don't think at the age that he is, that this is the end of Jason Roy. And we still see him actually in the 50 over format, I would argue, as his strongest suit. So we still see him as very much a part of that setup. It's just in this at the moment from the white ball series we had, then going into the 100 as well. We feel it's too much of a gamble to continue going into Pakistan and then straight into Australia, where the team that goes to that, or the squad that goes to that World Cup, will then go straight to Australia from there.
How did he take it? How is he mentally? Because it's been a tough run for him, hasn't it?
Yeah, he was obviously very disappointed. I think gutted was the phrase that he used, and he just wanted to make sure that this wasn't the end. And you always feel that these are sort of long, meaningful chats when you speak to players about that. But actually, when you actually, and Jos was the one who rung him. Jos wanted to be the one to tell him. They've obviously got a relationship, those two, and it's one of the tougher things that captains have to do. And he felt that he was the right person to tell him. And then myself, Matthew Mott, have spoken to him since. He's obviously very disappointed and just wants to, have a chance to go and show that he's not finished in international cricket, which none of us feel that he is. I still think he's a fantastic player. He's just literally, the timing has been awful for him. To lose form at that time, and also to not have a huge amount of time to really stop, reset, and then find it again. That's been one of the issues that they've had this year. Certainly in that white ball series, the close nature of every game means once you got on a roll in one way, it was very hard to get out of.
Did Alex Hales' name come up in any selection conversations?
Yeah, Alex Hales again was mentioned when we started to talk about who we felt was the best opening batsman or the best partner for Jos Buttler. Alex Hales was mentioned a lot. We just felt Johnny Bairstow was that man to go on and do that in the World Cup.
The door's still open for Hales potentially in the future, then?
Yeah, I think I've said on a number of occasions actually that I feel that Alex Hales has served his time for his misdemeanors, and then it's about now just on form, selection, and whether or not we feel they're the best person to go out there. At the moment, we feel that Johnny Bairstow for that World Cup is the best opening batsman.
And just finally from me, Woakes, Wood, Stone all back in. That's a huge boost, isn't it, after the injury problems we've had with bowlers of late?
Yeah, sort of they're back in with fingers crossed is probably the best way you could say it. And that's why it's been a very fiddly selection, because the likelihood is for Wood and Wogs that they'll start getting fit towards the back end of that Pakistan trip. So we've got to now make sure that we're getting them ready, because it's all well and good people being fit. We've got to somehow make sure, if they're our best options, that they're in rhythm, they're in form. There's no point having guys back if they're not being able to perform to their ability because of the long layoff they've had. So it's great to have those guys back. Some people we haven't had for a while in any format. They're a massive part of it. And now it's just, let's hope that our luck changes in terms of injuries, and actually that we have those guys able to take a full role when it comes to that World Cup.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go Will, Rory, and then Vish, please.
Hello, Rob. You've said Johnny's going to open batting. He's obviously done quite well in the middle order in the last couple of years since being moved down there. How do you expect to replace him there? Is that Ben Stokes' job?
Yeah, and I think that was one of the other decisions that we wanted to have. I feel that I'd like to get Ben Stokes up the order a little bit in T20 cricket. I feel that we haven't quite found his best role. And when that's been coming in later, that doesn't make the most of Ben Stokes. I think there's a great line in his documentary, if I'm allowed to plug that. Not that I have anything to do with it, to be honest, but where they sort of said big moments find him, and you want to give him the opportunity for those big moments to come, which I don't think we've done in international T20s. And every time he's done well in the IPL, I would argue that's been when he's either opened the batting or he's got in earlier. Whether his team have been 2 or 3 down, then all of a sudden Ben Stokes has had a chance to influence the game. And it was never a question of not having him in that situation, to be honest. So the knock-on effect of everything we're doing is so hopefully that Ben Stokes fits into that role and has a more fulfilled role in T20 cricket, which I think will get the best out of him, certainly in those big games. When you look around, you want to turn, I'd imagine whoever you are as a captain, Joss Buttler, Owen Morgan, when the game's on the line, you want to turn to Ben Stokes most of the time, or nearly every single time. So it's great to have him there.
And presumably just on a player who occupies a similar place in the team, you must be pretty pleased about David Milan's gone in the 100 and kind of, reasserted himself, I suppose, a little bit as a proper gun T20 player.
Yeah, and I think the challenge was sort of laid down by him, really, to show that he's got another gear. I think him and Matthew Mott spoke when he got left out of the 50 over competition, and David said, look, I've got another gear I can go to. And I think Matthew Mott spoke about, let's see it then. And that's what he's done in the 100, which is what you want. I mean, our batting lineup it's a great batting lineup on paper, and you want these guys firing, and the 100's been good to see David Milan play in the way that he has. And also you're starting to take into conditions in Australia as much as anything else as well. You feel that he's got a good game for what we're assuming will be wickets with a bit more pace, a bit more bounce. David Milan, hopefully it should be right up his street.
Okay, Rob.
Hi, Rob. You mentioned it was fingers crossed to a certain extent on Woody and Chris Woakes. When you add in the concerns over Liam Livingstone, Chris Jordan, we know Joss Butler's going to miss a few matches. Is there a real sense that you are reaching that tipping point with this World Cup squad, that things, you're not exactly sure who's going to be sort of fit and standing by the time you get there?
Yeah, at this point in time, that's absolutely the case. But all we could do really was you have your information from your medical teams and where they're at, and we're optimistic, I suppose, which might not be the right way to look at things with the way that injuries have gone this year. And then we've got other scenarios, we've sat down and we've almost had to think about, right, okay, what if this happens? What if he gets in? That sort of put us in that position. So hopefully we've got enough of a backup to be able to do it. And, the Pakistan trip in many ways has made it logistically a tough thing to organise your squad for the World Cup, but actually it gives us a chance to look at other players as well. As you see, certainly Johnny and Ben aren't going to be there because as multi-format cricketers, it's just too much cricket for them at the moment. And they've played a hell of a lot of IPL cricket. They've played a hell of a lot of T20 cricket, these guys. So it's not like they don't know the format. So we get a chance in Pakistan to have a look at some of the next generation, almost the next cabs off the rank in some regard. which then you never know, they might find themselves going out to the World Cup, because you can obviously replace any of these guys that don't make it from an injury point of view. You can then replace them.
And if I can just ask on a slightly sort of tangential issue, really, with the flooding in Pakistan, was there any sort of conversations that you're aware of that it might not be a good idea to go ahead with the tour, either for their benefit or yours, or it's obviously a pretty tricky situation over there?
Yeah, I think it's an ever-moving picture at the moment. There's been a hell of a lot of communication between people out there and the ECB, the PCA, but it's a trip that we're desperate to go on, and it's going to take a lot for us not to get out there, really. And I think hopefully us going out there and playing will be a positive story for what's been a pretty harrowing time for the people of that country. I'm really looking forward to getting out there.
Okay, Vish, then John Etheridge and Nicole.
Hi, Rob. Did you get the sense from the playing group that if you did pick Hales, it'd be welcome back in? The reason I asked that is, Stokes, when he was doing the press tour for his movie, was quite non-committal on his relationship with Hales at the moment. And also it seemed to be, during the period when Morgan was in charge, where it felt like he would have necessarily fit into, I suppose, the attitude and ethos of the group. Do you get a sense that that's changed and that he'd be, if selected, he would have been welcomed back with open arms?
Yeah, I think so. And from what we've spoken about, and it's never been an issue really as far as it's concerned. We were able to just debate it in terms of form. And look, I spoke to Alex Hales. He rang me actually. And, he argued why he wasn't there. And I think quite right too. I much prefer when these people pick up the phone and say, come on then, why wasn't I there? I have a huge amount of respect for that, as opposed to people who sort of go behind the scenes moaning about why they've not been picked for something. And it was, you look, it's just an unfortunate time where there's a hell of a lot of very good players, and it's actually, people always say it's good problems to have, but it's not straightforward on who you pick as a batter in this format in white ball cricket, because there's so many different options. There's a lot of people that have also missed out that quite rightly could have said, how come I'm not there?
Cheers, Vish. John, and then Nick.
Rob, hi. Moeen Ali is going to captain the team in Joss's absence. What are the qualities that he might bring to the job?
I always rated Moeen Ali. Joss was the one really who sort of spoke about it, wanting Mo to do it. I thought it was an excellent idea. I've always rated Mo incredibly highly, actually, when I was commentating on Blast games. When I first sort of saw him as a captain for Worcestershire, I always love a captain that just looks completely calm no matter what's going on. The chaos all around him, sort of the opposite of Nasser, who used to sort of be blowing up every time someone bowled a bad ball. But actually, Mo, I think T20 cricket needs someone that, when all hell is sort of breaking loose, they just look like there's no change almost at times. And Mo brings that. He's got an excellent cricket brain. He's often someone, since I've been in this job, he's often someone that I've spoken to canvass opinion for, whether it was about coaches, whether it was about any of these things. Well, you just want to find out what you think's going on. Mo is often a person that I talk to about those things. He's obviously very close with Joss. He's been really helpful to Joss when it comes to selection and in Joss's captaincy. And I think the two of those are a formidable team, actually, that have the respect of the players, obviously for what they've done, but as people as well. So I think that's it's a really key appointment, actually, that will help Joss as well as much as it does the team.
And you say that it's been a fiddly selection because of all the possible permutations, but also you said that your intended World Cup 11. So that's a good thing, I guess.
Yeah, I think so, and that we do know that, and it just depends on whether or not these guys, are fit, whether it ends up being that way. But then we've got other scenarios, people who can drop in. But I think you've always got to, when you have these things, you've always got to have, at this point, there's no reason why we can't pick that almost. We know who our best spinner is, who our best bowlers are, who our best batting lineup is. Then it's just a question of balance on the day, maybe, depending on conditions. And this has been a long time coming, this World Cup, and that's the position we're at. And you just work everything back from there, which then informs every decision you make along the way.
Right. And just funny, are you absolutely tied to the squad? I mean, say Will Jacks has an absolute stormer in Pakistan. You think, you've got to get this guy in. Can you do that, or is it only injuries that contained it?
No, I think it's only injuries that can change. That was one of the problems, really, with having to named the squad on the 16th as the latest is when the ICC wanted us to do it. So it then meant that obviously the Pakistan series happens post that, and then you can bring in injury replacement, stuff like that. So that's why we've used the Pakistan tour as much for anyone who's going to be in that World Cup who doesn't need to be rested. They're going to get a go. But it's a chance to actually see some of the bench strength and some of the next generation coming through, like the likes of a Will Jackson stuff. And then if someone does get injured, it might be those guys that come through, but it also might be some of the other guys that might be older, might be an Alex Hales, people like that, who we know a lot more about. Anyway, who we're not necessarily going to learn about in Pakistan. So, you know, this is the position we've got to at the moment. The likes of Jordan Cox, people like that. It's a chance to just see what they're like and hopefully prolong a dominant period in white ball cricket by these guys getting some games under their belt.
Okay, let's go, Nick, and then we'll finish with Stefan and George.
It wasn't an easy start for Joss as captain. What do you expect to see from him this winter and Matthew Mott?
Yeah, I think that it was a tough start, especially as well. The test team was almost a flip, really. The test team have been struggling. The white ball side have been fine to some extent, albeit they'd lost a few T20 games since that World Cup. Our record hadn't been fantastic, but they played against some very good teams. And we just had players not in form in that, I think. And that's always, that then just becomes a question. I think often, you know, in the media and what I used to do, we often sort of look at, right, okay, who do we get at? Who do we drop? And who do we bring in? And, you know, he's not playing well, so we'll bring someone else in that point, which we've obviously done with Jason Roy. But actually the questions for the coaches, the captains is, right, okay, these are good players. We've got to make them play better. We've got to get them back to their potential. If every single one of these players is playing to their potential, we've got a good chance in this. You know, we've gone to a position now, though, where you would say, you know, when we go into that World Cup with the injury cloud that's around us, you know, we're probably not the favourites by any stretch in this thing. But I don't think that's a bad thing either. We've got nothing to lose now. And if these players, that's the job of the coach and captain, certainly the coach in particular and his support staff, is get these players playing to the best of their ability, which is, you know, much easier than when you haven't got the personnel and you're thinking, right, you know, we haven't got the players to do it.
And on Jason, has there been any chats with him about his fitness? And not necessarily all the you know, where he's got an injury at the moment, but he does seem to pick up a lot of niggles during the season or during a tournament. Has there been any chats with him about working on that as well? I
think generally the medical team will pick up those things all the time with these people. But I also want us to get to the point to some degree. I think this with both teams. You know, these environments, you know, we don't want mollycoddling in this. You know, these are things where we want players to take responsibility for their own games a lot of the time. As I said, with whether it's selection, stuff like that, these guys pick up the phone. You know, you've got the resources of the ECB at your disposal. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and ask for it. But I have no concern really with these. Well, no, that's not true. You know, it seems like we've had a hell of a lot of injuries and a hell of a lot of niggles, which is something we've got to look at. But in terms of where Jason Roy is, I don't think it's a big issue at all.
Thanks.
Okay, Stefan and then George and then Paul.
Just a couple of longer term ones, if you don't mind. How big a part or how full a part do you expect Jimmy Anderson and Stuart Broad to be playing on the Test Tour of Pakistan later this year?
Do you know what? We've not really sat down and thrashed that out at all, to be honest. So I have no answer for you on that, nor the need to feel I need to give you an answer on that, really. When we sit down and discuss it, then I'll be able to give you a much better answer. But until then, I feel that I'd only be giving you my opinion, which is not valid at the moment or not relevant, really.
And do you still expect to be touring South Africa in the early part of next year?
At this point in time, yeah, we do. We've sort of said, yeah, we want to go ahead. We're going to try and make sure we take that seriously, take as strong a team as we possibly can. For those 3 games out there, it's up to South Africa if they want to do anything different. All we're going to do is if those fixtures are going on, we'll be going out there. It's up for them to decide whether they want to do it or not. So
no indication yet that they won't go ahead?
Not as yet, no.
Lovely. Thanks very much.
Okay, George, and then Paul Newman.
G'day, Rob. A couple of things, please. Firstly, is David Milan sort of penciled in as your number 3?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say at the moment. I mean, whether or not you have some sort of floating batting lineup on the day and you get off to a flyer, who knows? But yeah, David Milani is.
Okay, so and this sort of refers back to the question that Dolly asked. There are a lot of people who are sort of injured or tired or whatever coming into this World Cup. I guess in an ideal world, you'd have built to it, but it sort of feels like we're getting there, clinging on to some people a little bit. Is that just reflective of the schedule generally? Is that the problem in a nutshell with what you have to deal with?
Yeah, I think so. The international schedule is a tough one. We saw that. It's, you know, as I've said, a lot of the time it's not necessarily the amount of cricket, it's the condensed nature of the cricket was the problem. And what have they played? 12 white ball games? I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly what it is this year, which isn't a lot. But when you play it in about 23, 24, however many days, it becomes a lot into it. And that's one of the things we're going into really with, you know, the discussions for next year, stuff like that, not necessarily on the international schedule, but certainly we want to try and come up with a more manageable schedule for all players, really, because the feedback we're getting overwhelmingly is that players, coaches, ground staff are finding the schedules that we have increasingly unmanageable.
Thank you.
And the last question, Paul Newman, please.
Hi, Rob. Will Joss definitely keep wicket moving forward? He seemed to be experimenting without the gloves at one point.
Yeah, he has done, really. I think he's trying to work out at times in the IPL. He hasn't kept. In times, he's obviously kept. And at the moment, he's very happy to keep. But again, I think we've got a luxury, really, of being pretty flexible in that regard, and he can do what he thinks is best. I think one of the most important things in this period now is Jos Buttler's our absolute prime asset. He's the best white ball batsman in the world. I think he's a fantastic captain. And the decisions really, I think often is like what's best for you to perform to the best of your ability. And, you know, I've no doubt that in whatever he wants to do, he'll do exactly that. At the moment, that's as a keeper. But we can be pretty flexible either way to make sure we can accommodate him so he feels that he can do whatever he wants to do to the best of his ability.
And do you expect him to play any part in Pakistan at this stage?
I think best case scenario will be sort of towards the back end. He wants to go out there and he's going to sort of try his hand out, I think, at being a sort of coach / mentor or whatever, and see how good he is at throwing balls and stuff like that. I think he'd be a great person for these younger players in particular. When you got the best white ball batsman in the world being able to tell you about how to go through it, I think it's fantastic from him that he actually wants to go out there and still play a full part, because he could have easily just turned around and said, you know what, I'll have a couple of weeks off and meet you all in Australia, but that's not the case, which I think is a credit to him.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Keezy. Catch you all soon. This is live, so you can go out as soon as, just so everyone's aware.
Thank you.
Nice one. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Cheers.
See you all. Go well.